Well, we are almost at the end of Canto 4, Book 1. And we have here a long passage describing the journey of the soul and this journey is beautifully described through the image of the sailor on the flow of time. And we have almost a page and a half, or almost 2 pages, of what are the different difficulties the soul meets with in its journey, in its earth life. What we call the soul's odyssey upon earth. So where we stopped last time is this line, he chances on unimagined continents, a seeker of the islands of the blessed. He leaves the last lands, crosses the ultimate seas. He turns to eternal things, his simple quest. Life changes for him, its time-constructed scenes, its images veiling infinity. Now, this is of course the journey of the soul, the odyssey of the soul. But at the same time, it's the journey of the human being. Because the journey really becomes a conscious journey in the form of the human being. That means when man begins to seek, then begins this journey of the soul. So we can kind of call it either the journey of the soul or the journey of the seeker, the spiritual seeker. So we read, earth's borders recede, and the terrestrial air hangs round him no longer is translucent veil. You see, after a stage is reached, then slowly it is as if the earth's pull comes to an end. You know, in the beginning we have a lot of the resistance from earth, that means from the outer nature. But slowly earth's borders recede and the terrestrial air hangs round him no longer. He has crossed the limit of mortal thought and hope. He has reached the world's end and stares beyond. You see, he is either the seeker or the soul, whichever we want to take. So, of course, he is beyond the mortal thought and hope, because there is no more the realm of the mind, is beyond the reach of the mind. So, and then he also puts here, he has reached the world's end. World's end is not the physical end, it's the end, the end of ignorance. The eyes of mortal body plunge their gaze into eyes that look upon eternity. It's a very beautiful thing. You see, the eyes of mortal body plunge their gaze. A very strong word here, plunge. It's not just looking, plunging, you can see the greater force of the identity into eyes that look upon eternity. So there is a shift of consciousness, I can see. The time consciousness into the timeless consciousness. So there is a border where you go beyond. It's not the question of what, when we say beyond time, it is not the metaphysical time wherein we say time and the timeless. That means the timeless is the non-manifestation, time is a manifestation. So it's not in that sense that Ashapati or the seeker is going beyond manifestation, but he's going beyond this mental consciousness. So therefore, he is entering into another range of consciousness where he looks at the timeless. A greater world times traveler must explore. You see, now he's saying, a greater world times traveler must explore. This traveler of the time now is going into the beyond. At last he hears a chanting on the heights, and the far speaks, and the unknown grows near. He crosses the boundaries of the unseen and passes over the edge of mortal sight to a new vision of himself and things. So it's very clear now there is a transition between the time and the timeless, between the earth and beyond. So in this transition, what it says, the unknown grows near. He crosses boundaries of the unseen and passes over the edge of mortal sight. So the physical, the earth, the mortal, the material, all that is falling back. Now he is moving toward the unseen, the timeless, the higher consciousness. And there is a new vision of himself and things. Obviously, from that level of consciousness, the understanding becomes quite different. He is a spirit in an unfinished world that knows him not and cannot know itself. Now, what are we getting to know? What is the new vision and new understanding? That after all, man is a spirit in an unfinished world. So this is a very beautiful new vision, that man or this evolution is not yet complete. So we are only part of this incomplete world, or we are only in the process of this eternal evolutionary process. So the journey has not come to an end. It's there, it's continuing. The surface symbol of his goalless quest takes deeper meanings to his inner view. See, this is his is a search of darkness for the light, of mortal life for immortality. You see, this is of primary importance. The surface symbol of his goalless quest takes deeper meanings. I read this in the Mother too. You see, somebody had asked her the question about why is it that the divine or the Lord doesn't look at this world and its sorrow and suffering, etc. I mean, the question of course is a vague thing that I'm remembering, not exactly the same question. But the answer was interesting. She says, once you go beyond the mental consciousness, the way you look at this world itself changes so much. It's no more, the same thing. There is the same suffering, but the way of looking at becomes so different that even this question of sorrow and suffering may not come into your mind. So one of the things is it's not an escapism, but it is seeing at it as if from a more comprehensive level, we say from a more global level. You see, now we are looking at a problem from very narrow consciousness. So when we see the same thing in a broader context, you see this all the difference. So you're saying, I think, that the Lord looks at the world from a higher consciousness, so He has a global perspective in which what is so very important for us at this moment gets kind of a diffuse, it's not that focused thing. So that's the meaning we are getting here. So this entire life becomes something different, gets a new meaning and a new vision, and His is a search of darkness for the light, of mortal light for immortality. Well, obviously, those of us who have been into Indian culture, the first thing that we remember is the famous Vedic prayer, Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. The same thing, the search from darkness to light, from consciousness, from unconsciousness to consciousness, from death to immortality. So that's the line exactly we see repeated here. Search of darkness for the light, mortal life for immortality. In the vessel of an earthly embodiment, over the narrow rails of limiting sense, he looks out on the magic waves of time, where mind, like a moon, illumines the world's dark. He very directly says, in the vessel of an earthly embodiment, the vessel is the body. So the soul, the psychic being which comes into the body, that's the earthly embodiment. Now what does it do? Over the narrow rails of limiting sense, he looks out on the magic waves of time. Of course, our mind, body and life are only instruments of perception, instruments of contact for the soul. So now it's simple that this divine being who comes into the being, into the body, looks out at the world through this limiting sense. And what does he see? Also, where mind, like a moon, illumines the dark, world's dark. You see, mind has been given a proper position that it does illumine the world. But what is the illumination it has? It has the illumination like the moon. Like the moon means, moon is always a reflected light. It doesn't have the light of its own like the sun. So the mind is having some illumination, but it's a reflected light, is a reflection of the light of the supermind. So we do understand that the mind is not the original light, and yet it's a reflector of the supramental light. So whatever light it can reflect, it is helping the humankind. There is limbed, ever retreating from the eyes, as if in a tenuous mystery dream light drawn, the outline of a dim mysterious shore. You see, with this moon, with its ideals, with its mind and its ideals, we do have a limbed, there's a beautiful painting, a kind of a outlining. Outlining in kind of, in painting is called outlining in watercolors. So you can see watercolors are not very harsh, are not very strong. There's a kind of a paleness. So in that pale color, what is happening? We have been given the tenuous mystery dreamlight drawn, the outline of a dim mysterious shore. We do see, it's like if you are on the ship from a very far distance, you see a vague kind of what you call the shore. When you are approaching shore, you see it in a vague manner. So too, the mind gives you the vague plan or the vague outline of the shore of the divine, of the higher consciousness. It cannot give you too much knowledge of the beyond. A sailor on the inconscient's fathomless sea, he voyages through a starry world of thought on matter's deck to a spiritual sun. But here I think we come to the image of the sailor. So we see here, in conscience fathomless sea, he voyages through a starry world of thought on matter's deck to a spiritual sun. This is again an image, and I just now remember, taken from the Vedas. You see, in the Vedas we have the image of two oceans, the inconscient ocean and the superconscient ocean. They call it the double ocean. So the superconscient, of course, we understand, but they give the image of the ocean. And the inconscient is, of course, what we have understood as the beginning of the evolution. So evolution begins here, and then the soul is rising up from the inconscient towards the, what he calls, on matter's deck to a spiritual sun. So going beyond the matter, beyond life, beyond mind, the soul is journeying forward. So these are little sketches, different sketches of the journey of the soul, which starts its journey from the inconscient, reaching the superconscient. Now that image is left behind and we go to a new image. Across the noise and multitudinous cry, across the rapt, unknowable silences, through a strange mid-world under supernal skies, beyond earth's longitudes and latitudes, his goal is fixed outside all present maps. You see now, he has gone beyond the mental level. So obviously now his image, his goal is beyond all the present maps drawn by mind. And what's happening? But none learns whither through the unknown he sails, or what secret mission the Great Mother gave. That's very interesting, that there is a journey of the soul. It is going beyond. But we do not know what is the mission, what is the secret destiny of our journey. In the sense, we are not given the script saying, you will become that, or you will be that. The script is revealed in the going. I think I had told you sometimes, now I understand after reading this line. See, long back when I was again in my teens, and so I had asked a similar question as to what's my destiny in this life of mine. I returned to her and I thought of knowing what is the direction. And then I had made some decisions and all that. But so she writes that let your decision be integral and your destiny will be revealed to you as you go along. So she was not wanting to tell you, you will become so and so, be lecturing at Savitri in the future. She doesn't give you that, because if she says that, there are two things, one or two things that may happen, that if you don't do that, you will be depressed. You will say, oh my God, that was my destiny and I never fulfilled it. Yeah, in one letter I was reading yesterday, Mother says, normally when people ask me some questions regarding their life and problems and decisions to be made, she says, I normally don't give a definite answer. I let them choose. Because if I give a decision and it is not followed or fulfilled, there could be a catastrophe. So I understood really, she says, if you do not follow my decision, there could be a catastrophe in your life. So why should I give my decision and bring you a catastrophe? So she leaves the decision to you. Of course, oftentimes telling us the pros and cons of the decision. If you do this, it will happen. If you don't do that, that will happen. So too, I think now I understand when she said, as you go along, your destiny will be revealed to you. Because I can take multiple choices. So depending upon your choice, you will reach a different goal. So that's why we says, we do not unknown his sales or what secret mission the Great Mother gave, he doesn't know. The soul doesn't know. Because it may take 10 lives, 20 lives, 50 lives to reach the same goal. So we do not know. So it says, the secret mission we do not know. In the hidden strength of her omnipotent will, driven by her breath, across life's tossing deep, through the thunder's roar and through the windless hush, through fog and mist where nothing more is seen, he carries her sealed orders in his breast. You see, in the hidden strength of her omnipotent will, driven by her breath across life's tossing deep. You see, the soul is journeying. It doesn't know its destiny, its end. But there is a force, there is a consciousness guiding it. The divine consciousness, the divine will. But how is it going? It's going across life's tossing deeps, through the thunder's roar and through the windless hush. You see, life is not just a smooth journey. It has all the vital passions, the mind's imaginations, the mind's ambition, all that is the life's tossing deeps, and the thunder's roar and the windless hush of mind. These are all the stages, is giving us still the image of the travel over the ocean. So is using the windless hush and the tossing deep to describe our vital passions and our hush of mind, our mind's thunder and roar, etc. So he carries her sealed orders in his breast. Late will he know, opening the mystic script, whether to a blank port in the unseen he goes, or armed with her fiat, to discover a new mind and body in the city of God, and enshrine the immortal in his glorious house, and make the finite one with infinity. So simple and so beautiful yet. So, late will he know, late on a journey, late when he has reached a higher consciousness. What will he know? Opening the mystic script, the script that is carrying in his breast, that is the secret mission given by the mother. Late in his journey, he comes to know, what is it? Whether to a blank port in the unseen he goes. So is my destiny to reach that unseen, that is the nirvana? Do we reach an end where there is only the non-existent, the nirvana? I mean, there is an end, there is also a possibility that we reach nirvana? Or is it my destiny, armed with her fiat, command of the Divine Mother? What is the command? To discover a new mind and body in the city of God. So is it my purpose? Is it the soul of the purpose of my soul's purpose? To do what? To discover a new mind, a new body in the city of God, that is this body itself, and enshrine the immortal in his glorious house and make the finite one with infinity. So is it the destiny of some people, some souls, to undergo the transformation required? As he puts it here, make the finite one with the infinite. The finite is this body, this mind is vital. So there are two options for us. One is to escape this evolution and get into nirvana. The other is to come back again and again to transform this body, make this mortal into the immortal, the finite into the infinite. So, we do not know, late in our life journey, we do not know what is my destiny. Across the salt waste of the endless years, her ocean winds impel his errant boat. The cosmic waters splashing as he goes, a rumor around him, and danger and a call. So across the salt waste of the endless years, Of course, again there's a new imagery here. The previous one we said about the two different destinies. But again he's coming to the journey here, that the salt waste of the endless years, this all our numbered years that we have wasted here upon this life, through all this wastage, through all this, danger, through all this mistaken path that we take, the errant boat, and through all the cosmic waters splashing as it goes on, I'm trying to keep the image of the boat going on the ocean, the waters, the ocean, the waves, all that the soul goes through, and with a danger and a call. Now the call is what is the most important word here. There is the inner call, the inner quest. So those who have this inner call, they have to go through all the splashes, they have to go through all the winds impelling this errant boat, through all these waves and the dangers of life. And as she again explains, the mother as she explains, yes, those who choose that higher life will have to suffer more, because there's a kind of FF movement, fast forward movement in their life. You see, that is the thing that many people in Sri Aurobindo's letters you will see. That's why they ask us to be very careful in choosing the spiritual life or the path of yoga. Because once you choose this life consciously and want to practice it, the whole life system becomes FF, fast forward. Like you see in a movie, things are moving fast forward. That means what? Your suffering, your pains, everything comes fast to you. It becomes compressed. What would have come after 10 years comes to you right now, all the problems. Because there is a movement of purification that needs to come in our being. So, it is that we have to be very strong and courageous. In fact, there was a sadhaka, I remember this, when he came to ashram and he said he wants to join the ashram, live here. Sri Aurobindo and the mother, either which one of them I don't remember now, had forewarned him, saying that you will have to undergo a lot of physical suffering, ailments, diseases, everything. So are you ready to take up that? If you have the courage, you can join. If you say, no, I will not be able to bear the suffering, better don't come. So they had warned people that those who take up this life is not a smooth life, it is a roller coaster life. And this gentleman, he says, yes, Sri Aurobindo, I am ready to undergo the suffering, but I will join. I want to take up this path. And verily did he have so much of suffering. I mean, the doctors would say there's hardly a disease that it isn't there in his body. He was, but he was a beautiful, great poet, a wonderful artist. I mean, even now, his poems are there, recited in the ashram programs. And one of the beautiful incidents I remember, once he got so ill, he was almost on the deathbed. And the doctors had left hope, he said. And then he was one who would never take to the advice of the doctors, take this medicine, don't take that food, oily food. He was a Pakka Bengali and he would eat all the fried food and all the puris and everything. He damn bothered. He said, if I have to suffer, let me suffer, but my tongue, I will not suffer my tongue. So you can imagine a man not following any doctors, anything, of course. Then he said, well, I am ready to go. But then he wrote to the mother that I am ready to leave my body, but only one wish I have, that you touch my chest with your feet before I leave. So he was carried to the meditation hall in the ashram. All of you know the place. His body was kept on the ground. And the mother literally came down, put her foot on his chest, one foot on his chest. That was his prayer. But instead of dying, he lived long after that incident. Because the mother's feet on his chest, you can imagine what force it must have gone him. It cured him, and he lived long after, for quite many years. Of course, not the suffering was not better, but his life was there, he lived. So what I mean is, it is these people who have to choose between this life, a comfortable life and a life which is full of sorrow and suffering. But there is progress. You see, for spirituality one has to sacrifice all these things. So here he says, But there is this inner call. All the danger of the journey is there, but as long as you have this inner call, you are safe. Always he follows in her force's wake. Now here is again very clear. It's the Purusha who is following the nature, the Prakriti. He sails through life and death and other life. He travels on through waking and through sleep. Of course, it's very obvious here. He sails through life and death and other life, What is that other life? That is the life in between life and death. So the soul comes to birth, goes to the other life, goes to death, the other life comes back. So there is a repetition. He's going on, he says, he travels on through waking and through sleep. Waking and through sleep, of course, life and death. A power is on him from her occult force that ties him to his own creation's fate. And never can the mighty traveler rest, and never can the mystic voyage cease, till the nascent dusk is lifted from man's soul, and the morns of God have overtaken his night. So this is again a very powerful, in fact some such lines come later on, when Savitri wanted to leave the world and he said, what is the end? So this is the philosophic message. It says, a power is on him from her occult force that ties him to his own creation's fate. And never can the mighty traveler rest, never can the mystic voyage cease. So all this that we hear, at least in our Indian religion, spirituality, dharma, whatever you call, a lot of people speak about the non-birth, that this will be your last birth, if you do this karma, if you do this pujas, after that there is no birth. But this question of non-birth is a fallacy. This birth or non-birth doesn't depend upon my mental wishes and my vital desires. It's the desire, it's the wish, it's the aim of the soul, it has come of its own. So because of the sorrow and suffering, I cannot say, this will be my last birth, I don't want to be born again. Who is that I who doesn't want to be born? It's your ego. It's the ego because of the batterings of the world. He says, enough is enough. But never can the mystic voyage cease, till the nascent dusk is lifted from man's soul, and the morns of God have overtaken his night. So until and unless the nascent dusk, the dusk of the ignorance, until that ignorance and darkness is lifted, there cannot be the morns of God, or the mornings of God have overtaken his night. That is, until and unless we really not only realize the psychic being, get it back into his connaissance, and it's in knowledge. So what does it say? To put it differently, that there's no end to the journey of the soul. With all our wishes, fancy thinking, the soul by itself does not stop its journey. When does it stop, if at all? First of all, if it gets back its higher consciousness, it evolves and gets back into its Jivatman, that is its parent divine individual. So the journey begins from the Jivatman and it goes back to the Jivatman. That means it has fulfilled its destiny upon earth. And what is the destiny is not to live out a few lives, but as we will tell later, I think, to bring transformation to the earth. And sometimes the mother would say, the souls want to come back even after they have fulfilled their wish or their journey. They want to come back to help the other souls in their journey. So they themselves may not require the journey to evolve. Like we have the beautiful case of Swami Vivekananda. He is not one of those souls who required a birth in order to progress. But he came down in order to help humanity in its going up. Vibhutis. These vibhutis are not souls who really require a birth for progression, but they consent to take birth in order to help mankind. So we see, as long as nature lasts, he too is there. The soul is there as long as nature lasts. As long as this world is there, the souls are there because they are here to transform. For this is sure, that he and she are one. It's not that the soul abandons nature and he says, you are ignorant, you are bad, and get away, get lost. Because after all, who is Prakriti? What is this nature? It is the extension of the Purusha himself. So Purusha cannot say, I don't want this creation. Either the Supreme Lord withdraws the creation into himself and then the whole game is over. But as long as this manifestation, this creation is there, the Purusha will keep coming. Because the aim of Purusha or the soul or the psychic being is, as he would say later on, that Godhead seed might flower in mindless space, that transformation that Sri Aurobindo is speaking of. Until then, the game goes on. Even when he sleeps, he keeps her on his breast. Whoever leaves her, he will not depart, to repose without her in the unknowable. So it's a beautiful guarantee to say that the Purusha is never going to abandon this world. The Lord, the psychic being, the soul, they are not going to return saying, there's a beautiful abode of Ananda and I go back there. No. He will not abandon this earth and the creation. He will not depart to repose without her in the unknowable. There's a truth to know, a work to do. Her play is real, a mystery he fulfills. So it is not an illusion, as some of our famous philosophers said, the world is an illusion. He says no. There's a truth to know, a work to do. What is that work? Work of transformation. What is the work of transformation? To take, again the last line, the Godhead's seed might flower in mindless space. That until and unless the Supreme Godhead flowers from this matter, the journey would not end. So it says nothing. There is a plan in the mother's deep world whim, a purpose in her vast and random game. In spite of all the darknesses, all the ignorances, all the suffering, there is a purpose, there is an aim, there is a goal, and we are moving towards that. This ever she meant since the first dawn of life. This constant will she covered with her sport, to evoke a person in the impersonal void. With the truth light strike earth's massive roots of trance, wake a dumb self in the inconscient depths, and raise a lost power from its python sleep, that the eyes of the timeless might look out from time, and the world manifest the unveiled divine. So this is the entire explanation of this single word. There is a plan in the mother's deep world whim, a purpose in her vast and random game. So this is the summary of Sri Aurobindo's philosophy, these few lines. What is that summary? She meant since the first dawn of life that there is this, right from the beginning of life, that plan is there. What is it? This constant will she covered with her sport, with her games, with her revelation, with her evolutionary techniques. What is it? To evoke ultimately a person in the impersonal void. You see, this impersonal void is the inconscience with which evolution begins. But this impersonal void slowly evolves into the individual, the matter, the animal, the plant, and then the human being, where the real divine personality within him wakes up. So imagine that impersonal void where there's no question of an individual consciousness, evolves not only in individual consciousness, but an awakened, aware, self-aware consciousness. So that is the person with the truth light strike earth's massive roots of trance. You can see the truth light, the supramental light. So with that supramental light, strike earth's massive roots of trance of inconscience. And wake up what? Wake a dumb self in the inconscient depths and raise a lost power from its python sleep. This is a kind of that immobility of the inconscience, the dormant state. From there is a churning, a power comes in. And this truth light awakens, arises this power in the python sleep of the inconscient. So the inconscient begins to move, evolve and go up. Out of that what happens? That the eyes of the timeless might look out from time. You see, look out from time, remember that. Not look out on time or in time. Because the timeless, after all, who is evolving? It is the timeless consciousness which is evolving. So the divine within the inconscient, it is He who is evolving. That means it is the timeless who is coming up, evolving. So He is looking out from time, and the world manifests the unveiled divine. For this, you see, so clear. For this, He left His white infinity. He, the psychic being. It is for this purpose, now we are speaking about this entire long journey, all His dalliance, and we have had beautiful passages between the relation between Purusha and Prakriti, almost romantic, dallying, the psychic being giving up, the soul giving into the place of Prakriti. All this eternal, long stretch game. Why does the Purusha do that? Is it that he is not conscious of himself? Is it that he has lost himself in Prakriti? Is it not that he is aware that he has a purpose? No. He is all the time conscious. But he is leaving, he has to give time for Prakriti to transform. He cannot impose. And then he says, for this he left his white infinity. He, the soul, the Purusha. That is because of this work of transformation, this work of really having, the timeless look out from time, manifest the unveiled divine, and laid on the spirit the burden of the flesh. You see, again, laid on the spirit the burden of the flesh. That means it's the psychic being, the soul which has come down with this purpose and then taken a body. You see, that spirit which had no body, which was completely into that supremely conscious entity, that has to take up a gross body. So that what? That Godhead seed might flower in mindless space. So that is the ultimate goal, the purpose for which the psychic being, the soul, has played or is playing, will play an eternal game with Prakriti. Until Prakriti, nature, the outer nature, that Godhead seed might flower. That until there is the supramental flower that bursts through matter. So until then, there is no end to this game. So you call it game of Purusha Prakriti, call it game of God and Spirit with matter. And this, each one of us can only hasten this process of the flowering of the supramental flower in this inconscience only by reversing the movement of Purusha and Prakriti in our own selves. You see, we cannot do for the world, for others. Each soul within itself has to do this yoga of transformation. And to the extent we do, we help evolution. Otherwise, it will happen, but it may take eons and eons. But then of course there is a promise here that the soul will not leave, the Purusha will not leave this world until there is complete flowering. So friends, we have come to this end of Book 1, Canto 4. But actually we have, as we said in the beginning, the Yoga of Ashwapati begins with the Canto 3 of Book 1. It goes through Canto 3 to Canto 4, Canto 5. And of course we have seen the evolution described here of Ashwapati, but actually it is of Sri Aurobindo. The first Canto 3 we get the Yoga of the King, the Yoga of the Soul's release. Then we have Canto 4. Then Canto 5 says the Yoga of the Spirit's freedom and greatness. See, these are the beginnings of Ashwapati's tapasya or yoga. Now what we see in these 3 cantos is a kind of a prelude, a summary statement of Ashwapati's yoga, the details of which are seen in Book 2, the long Book 2, 10,000 lines. So what's happening here, I have cogitated and seen that yes, in Canto 3, 4 and 5 we see the release of Ashwapati from his own ego, from the boundaries of earth, as we said here, he goes beyond. So these are the first steps of sadhana or of yoga, where you go beyond the human limitations, human limits of the ego, and then begins the ascent. And that ascent is the traveler of the world stay at Book 2. So this is how we see first step, Cantos 3, 4, 5, then the ascent, Book 2, and then of course Book 2 ends with that great vision of the Divine Mother. Then we have in Book 7 and 9 and 11 the Yoga of Savitri. So we have between the two, as I described earlier, the two processes of Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga, the vertical and the horizontal. So what we will see here, what we also see emphatically, is what Sri Aurobindo really talks of in that book, The Mother. You see, he has given us, as I said, it's really the summary, absolute summary, the quintessence, if I can use the word, of Sri Aurobindo's yoga, that book, The Mother. You see, it's almost to understand The Mother, you must read Savitri. It's that kind of a compactness is there. I mean, he wrote that The Mother as a letter to a disciple. So he has given the quintessence. He has not elaborated. But every word, every line, every para, to understand you have to read the whole of Savitri and the whole of Life Divine. That's why that the book is called an Upanishad. That Sri Aurobindo says, Oro Upanishad. Just as the Upanishad contains in each verse thousands of ideas. So the Mother is the Upanishads of the book, The Mother. So therein we have 3 words, which all of you know: aspiration, rejection and surrender. And here in these cantos, in the canto 3, 4, 5, what we have seen, we get 2 aspects: aspect of aspiration and surrender. And rejection comes in Book 2. You see, in each of these worlds that Ashwapati goes through, the worlds of the physical, the vital, the mental and the spiritual, in each of these worlds we see Ashwapati coming across the realization that the physical is the end, the truth, the ultimate truth. Annam Brahman, matter is the Brahman. But then Ashwapati rejects it. He said, no, this cannot be the end. Or this cannot be the ultimate of creation. Then the same thing happens on the vital worlds. He has all innumerable kinds of different vital worlds where each one claims to be the best and the most beautiful and the highest. So everywhere we see Ashwapati rejecting. And the same thing is there in Sri Aurobindo's life, in his actual life. He has never accepted any realization as the ultimate end. Starting with the silence of the mind in Bombay, to the experiences in Baroda, to the experiences in Kashmir, to the experiences in Calcutta, to the experiences in Pondicherry. He always rejected, be it Brahman, Nirguna Brahman, Saguna Brahman, of Sri Krishna, of Vasudeva, of Kali, of everybody. He said, no, this is good, it has its place, but this shan't be the end. So exactly what we see in Ashwapati in Book 2 is nothing but Sri Aurobindo's own life experiences. That's why it's so very graphic, because he has gone through all these things himself, rejecting one and saying further, 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 until he reached the supermind. Not only the supramental consciousness per se, but the supramental consciousness in the body, brought it down into the body. Until then he did not accept any yoga as the end, as the ultimate. So that was the rejection part. But what is beautiful we see here, and especially in Book 2, is that complete state of surrender. You see, in one of the letters I was reading, I could not bring that passage, where he writes to his wife, imagine that must have been 1903, when he was in Baroda. He writes to his wife that I'm a complete puppet in the hands of God. I have no will of mine. I have completely surrendered myself. So you see a man who starts his life with his surrender. So it's not that surrender comes late in his life, but what he has advised us, he does it himself. Surrender, of course aspiration was always there, but surrender was there, and when he starts his sadhana, there is a question of rejection. So what is beautiful in Sri Aurobindo, and of course what we see here, is the same thing, that is, he surrendered to the ultimate, to his inner consciousness, to the divine consciousness, followed him, as he said, like a puppet, without any argument, without any will. So you see why he left Calcutta, why he left Baroda, Chandanagar, why he came to Pondicherry. All that are, he says, I am acting like a puppet in the hands of God. So, not meeting his wife, not going to his wife in Calcutta, he says, no, I have to follow the dictates of that voice, of that divinity. So what is remarkable, and then I was so flabbergasted when I read, when he started his yoga with Lele, and by then Sri Aurobindo was not a novice, he was not in the kindergarten of spirituality. He had by then achieved a lot of higher consciousness, lot of experiences, and yet when he finds a guru called Lele, he says, I had absolute obedience for him. Spiritually, he was almost by then much higher in the consciousness than his guru. But because he had a problem and he needed the guru, the moment you say, Vishnu Lele was my guru, he says, I suspended all argument, all decision, all doubt, all question. So he says, I completely obeyed my guru, without question. And because of that surrender, he achieves within 3 days what normal yogis would have taken 30 years perhaps. So what I want to bring out is that all his life he practiced this question of surrender to the divine will. And perhaps because of that tremendous surrender that he moved so fast on his spiritual line. And it is only what we see amazingly is that after achieving surrender, aspiration, part of the rejection, or by then the full, mostly, that he starts working for the world. Of course, there was a phase in Calcutta, of course even in Baroda he does it, but even by the time he goes to Calcutta for his Bande Mataram, he had already achieved great sides of spirituality, great self-control, great surrender and rejection and aspiration. What I want to tell you here is, we all know his life. Because when I really ponder over these things, I realize that he always tells us, Mother and Sri Aurobindo, that first achieve the inner, the contact within the psychic being. And then you act for the world, in the world. Of course, it doesn't say you become a recluse or an ascetic. But the whole effort is to achieve the inner. And both Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, in their young lives, when we think, oh, we should go on a picnic, we should go on a honeymoon, we should go on to enjoy the world, these people enjoyed the inner consciousness. And with that inner contact, when they come out to Pondicherry, when they came out to make the ashram then the whole vision, the force, the consciousness was ready. So they could build, or they are building what they are doing now because of their first inner contact. So it's not that Sri Aurobindo was a recluse, he was in Baroda under the Gaikwad, he was in Calcutta, the great revolutionary movement he was leading. And yet, the whole living was within. The whole sources of the fund of his knowledge and consciousness was from within. So there we understand the secret of a mystic's life. We concentrate on the outer, manifest, trying to do on the outer. But what is the source? Ignorance. Our mind. Our dubious mind. So depending on this dubious mind, if you work, then obviously our work itself is dubious. Full of mistakes, full of errors, full of inconscience, full of ignorance. But here were they who really worked from within outside, so is their work is immaculate, truthful, honest, sincere, transparent, full of light. You turn all his lives of life divine, synthesis, essays on the Gita, there's not one word of falsehood. And you read all their volumes of essays and questions from Mother or Sri Aurobindo, there's absolutely the same answers, the same questions. And then they do not contradict themselves in any one letter. Because our mind may say, oh my God, yes, last time what did I write? And you may contradict yourself because you are not right, you are not truthful. But I have again and again seen that there is a single inner consciousness with which they act. So the action has the power of manifestation, of realization. That's the difference between them and us. Because they are realized within, they manifest out. But we are trying to manifest something which we are not realized. There is no source. Of course we have the devotion, we depend on the grace of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo, there is an aspiration. But these are the sadhaks, these are the yogis, Mahayogis, who acquire the power of realization before they set out to action. So, this is what I see even in Savitri, that's the rhythm. Ashwapati gains that inner power of the same three words, aspiration, rejection, surrender. So ultimately we cannot, neglect these three words. They are really the quintessence of Savitri itself. We have only to make a little search and it's there. Well friends, we have, come to the end of Canto 4, but we have the last Canto 5 of Book 1, which as I told you contains the last phase of Ashwapati's Yoga, which I will take up only when I come back on the 16th of June. I'll be back on 15th and it's a Sunday, so 16th is a Monday. So I'll resume classes on 16th June and with the new Canto 5. So until then, have a good vacation, a summer vacation. Yeah, at least the difference between you and me is I'll be in Nainital, cool place. You'll be in the hot place. Otherwise, I'll be working as much as you'll be working. All of you know that as a resource person, we don't have much rest. But still, the weather is good. We may be a bit relaxing. Yeah, thanks a lot. We'll have concentration.